All right, here we are. Welcome back. I like saying welcome back because we meet every Friday now on the People and Culture Essentials Videocast. I'm Jonathan. I'm going to be your anchor for the show today and also the coordinator for the PCA, or the People and Culture Association, which is a growing, dynamic group of people professionals who are joining us from different parts of the world to share their stories, success stories, challenges that they are facing in transitioning from the HR function to the People and Culture function. But the People and Culture Association is not just for HR professionals and people professionals. We have mediators, we have restorative justice practitioners, leaders, C suite management of professionals there with us. We have a lot of students, academics who are joining us as well on the membership. So please do reach out. I will be sharing some more information about how you can join and become a member. Uh, at the PCA. So you'll see a kicker at the bottom of your screen very soon, and there'll be more information about how you can, of course, join and become a member at the PCA. But today is all about a fantastic conversation that we have lined up for you on the People and Culture Essentials videocast. We have David Liddle, who's joining us, of course, as the host for the show. He is the CEO and founder of the TCM Group, the president of the PCA, and the founder of peopleandculture.com, and who's working very hard on his new book on people and culture. And joining him today is a very, very special guest. We have Angela Lewis who is joining us. She is the Director of People and Culture at the Welsh Ambulance Services NHS Trust. She has played different roles in the past in her career, of course, spending close to a decade in the role of director of people transformation at Companies House. She has of course worked a lot with the Cardiff Metropolitan University, then which was of course the UWIC, the Metropolitan Police, and of course the Great Ormond Street Hospital. But today it's all about her role as a people and culture director. When we go out there advocating about people and culture, we're always looking out for that bright spot, for someone who's there, who's getting it done, who's making those moves, making those monumental moves, who's actually moving and shaking the entire industry. And we're so lucky to have found Angela. And so we're really excited about this. We were just talking about this, David and I, that I know I branded this as finding an ambassador for people and culture, but Angela is more than ambassador. She is a practitioner. And so we are really, really excited about this one. Um, Welcome to the show, Angie and David.
Thank
The
you.
stage is yours now. I'm going to pop in backstage and manage things in the backyard. So feel free to use the chat box on LinkedIn and YouTube and drop your comments or questions for David and Angie. The stage is all yours.
Thanks.
Jonathan. Thank you, Angie. Welcome. It's great to have you here today.
It's so good to be here.
Oh, I'm so pleased. Thank you so much. I've been really looking forward to the conversation because we're talking a lot about people and culture. Obviously, that's the theme of the People and Culture Association. But you're doing more than talking about people and culture. You're making people and culture a reality for everyone within the Welsh Ambulance Service Trust. And I cannot wait to hear about the work that you're doing and understand more about the impact that it's having, Angie.
Well, I'm looking forward to talking to you. Always happy to talk about people and culture, in my work life and in my home life. So and it's great to have this sort of opportunity to have a chat in a very sort of positive space. So I hope we get lots of engagement from colleagues as well.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we had a nice chat, what, it was a couple of weeks ago now, and I wish we'd recorded that, Angie. It was so interesting. So I hope people enjoy the session. As Jonathan said, please do share your thoughts and observations and any questions for Angie and I today. We'd love to hear from you if you're listening to this live. And of course, if you're listening to this on record, please do let us know what you think. Please do let us have any questions. But Angie, let's get started. And as Jonathan said, you've had various roles and been involved in various activities. But just for in your own words, tell us a little bit about your journey and yourself, and how did you get into this amazing thing called people and culture?
Oh, I'm happy to do that. So yes, been working in the sort of people profession space for 34 years now. Still feels like yesterday. Best career you could ever hope for. And I think, as Jonathan mentioned, all of my experiences in the public sector, and themes of sort of health service, police service, university sectors, and civil service, and making a full circle back into the health service over the last 9 months, where I've joined the Welsh Ambulance Service. So public sector is at my core. That's what motivates and engages me. And I think for me, it's the reason that I get energized on a daily basis is the way in which our profession is changing, and that move towards a better understanding of the importance of culture at the heart of what we do, and the move away perhaps from some of the more traditional health service, and also just HR personnel. Just watching the evolution of our profession has been amazing over the last 34 years. So it keeps me motivated, but particularly the last 10 years, I think, when I've been in sort of director roles, having that ability to influence at an organizational level how it feels for people to come to work on a daily basis, that's what's really exciting. And that's particularly why I was so keen to talk to you, David, because I know this is what the community you're trying to create is all about.
Massively and massively. I'm interested, as Angie, what do you think are some of those drivers for change within the profession as you've seen them over the last 30 or so years? As you've seen the evolution of HR and the people function, what do you think are some of those drivers of change that you're seeing?
Oh, well, definitely. I was reflecting on this morning when I was thinking about the podcast. It's about expectations that individuals, as all of us have in terms of societal changes, our expectations of work, a recognition that work is important, but it's not the be all and end all. And therefore, as employers, we have to make work a positive experience for individuals because people have choices. I think that the agility and the need for change and the need to respond quickly to, again, the world around us means that people in our profession have to be able to adapt and equip colleagues in organizations to adapt quickly as well. So I think it's been a fascinating change from that very traditional personnel. This is how we tell everybody to behave. This is what you do. We only deal with the people who are doing terrible things, much more into that human resources, as we know, the Ulrich model and business partnering and working together, to where we are now, where actually we're co-creating. We are truly co-creating. We are actively listening and engaging, and actually employee voice is probably the most important thing. That was not the case 34 years ago. Definitely not. So, I mean, that's probably why I've retained that sort of passion and energy for my profession, because it has changed into a space where it absolutely resonates with me personally.
Fantastic. And I think you've had to kind of work hard, I guess, along the way, Angie, to make those changes. And I'd like to talk perhaps in more detail as we go through this the conversation today, how you influence others around you to drive change, and particularly the work that you've been doing with your chief exec and others. But before we do that, I think we've known each other for a little while, but I saw your LinkedIn post and it just jumped off. One of those posts that jumped off on a page, and you set out your people and culture plan, which reflected the Welsh Ambulance Service Trust people and culture strategy in a very powerful visual way. And I think we're going to share it on the screen. I'd be really curious to know a little bit about how you developed the plan, just maybe walking us through, Angie, what this means to you and what it means to your colleagues and to your people to help drive that positive culture of people, purpose, and values within Welsh Ambulance Service Trust. I can see, Jonathan, thank you. You've shared Angie's plan here. So, Angie, over to you. Just maybe talk us through what's going on here.
Very happy to do that. And just to say, it's not the first time that I've used a rich picture. So in Company's House, we did the same thing to try and bring our culture change to life. We also used it for our organizational strategy. So brilliant. I suppose part of this is I know it works. I know that it lands well with colleagues, and it particularly lands well if you co-create it. So I'm particularly proud of the work that has been done here within Welsh Ambulance, because this has been a co-creation. And I've only been in, we call it WAST, for 10 months. So this is probably the first sort of tangible product that I feel I've been able to develop with the organisation to start to show where we want to get to. So, and particularly the fact that I had input from our trade unions, senior managers, colleagues working in networks, external, contributions, really felt like it belonged to everybody. So just to give a sort of a little bit more clarity on it, in my left-hand corner, where you see the grey, the colour, the lack of colour, that's where we are at the moment. And that's not to say from an organisational point of view, everything's terrible. But if any of you do know about the NHS in the UK, it is pretty challenging at the moment. For those of us working in the ambulance sector, a large proportion of the day is spent for our staff outside hospitals. There are significant handover delays. There are challenges in terms of emergency departments. It is a really difficult experience at the moment. And we were really keen to sort of show that and explain where we are at the moment. And again, against a backdrop of coming out of a pandemic. And also our traditional ways of delivering services, which is people ring 999 and our ambulances convey people to hospital. That's how it is at the moment on the whole. And of course, we have 111, which is the sort of Welsh-wide service where colleagues may ring if they need emergency help or support at the weekends or if the GP surgery is closed. You'll see there as well some technology where perhaps our technology isn't as fit for purpose as it should be, and the challenges of just trying to get things done with clunky systems, which I hope everybody can understand because it is a challenge. And you also might be able to see somebody with their sort of doing this because of the frustration of bureaucracy and process. And perhaps as well, we want to sort of show we're a hierarchical organisation. So even when we don't want this to happen, it is quite top down and it is still quite sort of command and control. And while that was really relevant in COVID, when we absolutely were responding to a crisis, we need to move out of that. So that's the grey sort of visual about where we are now. And then you sort of hop over the bridge into this new world, which will take 3 or 4 years to achieve, but we wanted to show hope and optimism. And at the heart of this is our culture champions who will play a pivotal role in bringing this to life because they are owning and really wanting to be the early adopters of change. You'll notice we talk about getting the basics right because, again, listening to colleagues, the basics are, have I got the right kit? Have I got the right tools? Have I got the right environment? Have I got the right management and support to enable me to do my best work? So that is pivotal to this. And again, really trying to make sure where we're using digital tools that they are fit for purpose and that colleagues really understand how to use them. And then there's a big chunk here right at that bottom end about leaders and managers and the support and the positivity and the work we need to do to wrap around them to make sure that they feel like they can do their best work, because I think they're often a neglected group, and we really do need to invest in them because we're asking more and more of them on a daily basis, and really seeing them as coaches to support and enable their team to flourish. And then there's this bit right at the heart of this is about us as a professional organisation and all the colleagues who work in the organisation, those that you may say in the green uniforms, but also those who are behind the scenes supporting. Really, really powerful to make sure that every voice counts and that everybody can see how they play a part in the jigsaw of this organisation. And then a real emphasis on continuous learning, taking ownership of your development, and the importance of curiosity, ideas, and really having an opportunity to perhaps flex your career, think about other career paths. And then I suppose getting up to this sort of nirvana at the end, which we never will achieve because it should.
Oh, you will. You will, Angie.
Well, we'll keep evolving. Is that point around this will improve our performance, and at the heart of this are our patients, and that our patients will get a better service, a better outcome, and that we will change our model of delivery so that we focus much more on those roles where we can treat at the scene rather than conveying to hospitals. So that's a fundamental shift in our own model, but also that colleagues will have that sense of optimism, but also work-life balance, that because they're not stuck outside a hospital, sometimes after their shift should end, they'll be able to get home, they'll be able to plan things, they'll be able to see that they are making an impact and that their skills are really valued. So that's it in a nutshell. But every time we share this with colleagues, people will look at a different part, and it's about provoking conversations. And I should have referenced as well, you'll see the sort of partnership at the heart of this, the partnership with our trade union, but also the pivotal role all of our networks play in this, which again is absolutely pivotal. So I hope that's helpful.
It's amazingly helpful. I mean, it's fantastic. But what this talks to me is about the word co-creation, which you've used. But it feels that the whole, so the map, the plan's being co-created, and every single step through this journey, there's co-creation, there's engagement, there's listening, there's a sort of sense of empowerment, positivity, optimism, focusing on the person, but also focusing on the person as part of the system. And I love that focus. That the outcomes is about helping to drive improvements in patient outcomes and patient experience. And I think sometimes we get lost when we're focusing on these internal factors of what we're trying to all achieve. So it speaks to me about common purpose as well, and that sense that we're on the journey together. And I just wondered, for me as someone who's just passionate about this and finds these kind of graphics so valuable, and I can see some of the feedback people finding it valuable. Angie, how are your colleagues responding to this? Are they relating to it? Do they get it? And what are they saying about this route map that you're developing and describing?
Well, it's still early days because obviously we only launched it about 6 or 8 weeks ago. But as so many people are involved in the co-creation, I think that helps because, again, they're invested. They genuinely are. And interestingly, our trade union colleagues were the colleagues who suggested we started with that sort of grey colour. And again, so because people gave input and gave views, that gives them a buy-in anyway. So I would definitely say that's helped. But I think as well, what we are doing with this, because it is part of a portfolio of sort of materials. So there is the people and culture plan. There is the rich picture. We we have comms for each different parts of the organization. We're connecting with our culture champions, our networks, middle managers, the trade union, senior managers. I just did a session with our non-exec and our main board. So it's, for me, the biggest essence of this is how do we socialize it? How do we keep socializing it? And how do we keep referencing back to see whether we're able to show we're delivering against it? Because what I do not want is a plan or a rich picture that everyone says great, then we put it in a drawer and we never look at it. And I think one of the biggest challenges about truly delivering a people and culture plan, but also culture change, is you have to keep it relevant, you have to keep it alive, you've got to keep coming back to it. And for me, this picture is agile. We may change it, we may make some adaptations during the 3-year period, and that's what I want people to realize, that this is theirs, it's not mine, it's theirs. And how can we do it together? And your point about feedback, we posted it, my chief exec posted it on Twitter a couple of months, about 8 weeks ago now, and there was a couple of negative comments, people saying, waste of time, you should be getting on with what you're supposed to be doing, serving patients. And I was going to respond, I was going to put a little post, and then I thought, just wait, let's just see. And what was beautiful to see is that colleagues from other ambulance services actually commented and said, no, this isn't a waste of time. This actually talks to me. It tells me that people understand my daily lived experience and that there's some hope. And then a few other people joined in on that conversation. So to me, David, they're tiny steps, little jolts of joy, but they are showing that actually that's how you get connection. And even if people hate it, they're engaging with the conversation, and we've given people QR codes to get on their mobile phone to sort of bring it up and have a look at it, and just trying to, create the conversations and keep the conversations going.
Jolts of joy. I love that. And it's kind of, it creates that energy and excitement. But let's just unpack something you said there. Your chief exec shared the HR plan on Twitter. Chief execs don't do HR plans. They do other stuff. They leave HR to HR. Tell me more. Why is your chief exec posting your people and culture plan on Twitter? Unheard of.
Well, he's posted the rich picture, but also referenced the plan. And I think part of that is, this is the point about it is not my work. This is an organizational, priority. We put people and culture at the heart of our sort of plans for the next, 6-9 years, but particularly this year. So if you mean it, then you better show it. So my expectation is not just him, but my other colleagues, the non-execs. I did write to every single one of them and say, you are a key leader. I need you to be my advocates. Another person who commented and shared this as well is one of our non-exec directors, who's my champion for culture. So it's trying to get everybody to recognize they have a role and that they want to play that role. So it is good, because I know sometimes colleagues can encounter that sense of they're a bit lonely on their own. So, but there is something about actually it's all our responsibility. And I think that balance between, yes, it is my role in an organization, but I can only do this if my peers, my chief exec, my chair, my non-execs, everybody wants to go in the same direction. So, it is important.
It seems to me that building allyship then and building coalitions for driving change is a really key feature of your role, Andrew, the way you're describing it and bringing people with you. Do you think we're investing enough in our people and culture populations and perhaps traditionally in the HR function around some of those skills? Because I'm not sure we see quite so much of that. I mean, I don't want to be pejorative, but I think we see more silo kind of working, and sometimes things feel that they're more fenced in. But it seems like there's a set of capabilities there that you're describing. Do you think we're providing enough of those capabilities to people out there doing the work that you're doing?
It's a really good question, David, and I don't think I'd ever really thought about it. But what I do have in my teams always is people who are incredibly creative,
Yeah,
are brilliant communicators. They
yeah,
understand about marketing, PR, they understand about relationships. And I
yeah,
think having that wider cohort of team really helps because they challenge. I've also worked really closely with sort of digital colleagues around agile techniques, and
yeah,
and using a perhaps a broader group of colleagues to work with to challenge, but also learn from them about how do you present information in a way that connects and engages
yeah,
people. How do you communicate in innovative ways, can be a real positive way in to some of those
yeah,
conversations where perhaps traditionally, HR, personnel, even people and culture, it's you just get on with that bit. Whereas actually, if you are working really closely with some of those more, I'm not saying we're not innovative, but some of those people are far more in that space. It makes a real difference, and it's really helped me. But I think your point about training and just education and coaching for people and culture leaders about how do you promote, how do you market, how do you socialize and bring to
yeah.
life ideas is a really good point.
It's really, I mean, you're using some really powerful, it's such fresh language, such fresh thinking, agile, marketing, PR. There's some stuff in there around psychology and understanding relationships and understanding people. And it seems like that's such a powerful skill set that equips you then to begin that socialization, building that allyship and really helping to drive those changes. You've got one of your colleagues, Dawn, who's on the call as well. So our culture champions are thriving, bringing to life our purpose, and people and culture strategy, proud to work and within WASP in driving those changes. Welcome,
Hi,
Dawn,
Dawn.
to the. You've got a nice wave there from Angie. Thanks, Dawn, for that. It sounds fantastic. I can imagine it's really exciting. Can we talk about the C-suite for a moment, if that's possible, Angie? Because I think for many in HR, they've striven to, or never know if it's the right word. Striven,
I don't
stroved.
know.
They've
Strove. Strove.
strove. I think strove's the right word. Thank you. They've strove to have a sort of a strategic influence in the board, and some to greater or less extent have been able to do that. But there seems to me like the relationship with your chief executive has been a really defining feature in the relationship and the work that you've been able to do. Could you say more, Angie, about how you shape the relationship with your chief exec and the kind of impact that that's having, notwithstanding that they've been sharing it on Twitter and talking about this, how you went about building that relationship with the chief exec? It feels like that potentially is a bit of a holy grail when it comes to driving some of the changes that you're talking about.
I think it's a common theme, and I would say definitely over the last 10 years, since I've been doing sort of director roles, it has been my theme. Ultimately, I want to be a trusted advisor for my chief exec, whatever organization I work in. But I also want to be a innovator, and I want to be a challenger in terms of really asking chief execs to sort of look out and do that horizon scanning as well. And I think that theme of being curious, connecting with your chief exec around what's going on elsewhere, what's working, what isn't working, asking them to trust you, but also being willing to take some risks seems to be, well, it's worked for me in the last sort of 10 years, and I've had 3 different chief execs. It has worked,
Yeah.
but also building on their particular passion, whatever that might be as well. If it's particularly around perhaps innovation, really, really building on that. If it is about, just wanting to deliver great performance, just finding that aspect that really energizes them, and then working with them to find some ways of bringing it to life and celebrating the quick wins as much as possible.
Fantastic. We got Luke Omani on the listening to us today. He was actually one of my guests there last week. Luke, hi there, and you've just been providing some great feedback there. So really kind of celebrating the creator and challenger comments that you're making there, and that sort of champion work, and celebrating those small wins. So very warm welcome, Luke. It's great to have you here, and I hope you're enjoying being a listener as much as you were being a guest this time last week. So some really great advice there for people and culture professionals to help them to secure and gain that trust and that relationship with the chief exec in terms of driving those particular changes. Just wonder if there's any other advice that you might have for people who are aspiring and listening to this and influenced by this and see this as aspirational, but they might be thinking, well, where do I start? How do I begin this journey to get started? And that's a question I get asked a lot. David, we love the stuff around people and dialogue and compassion and all of the stuff that's so vivid there. But the question that I get asked pretty much more commonly than any other, Angie, is I don't know where to begin. I don't know where to start. I just wondered if you had any thoughts or reflections or guidance for people who maybe share your aspirations, but just are so bogged down in stuff, they don't know where to start.
Yeah, happy to. And I think part of it is that listening. And I was going to, 9 months into WAST, so you could say my induction's over. Okay. But I actually call it now, I'm not on induction anymore. I'm on connection. Okay. I've moved out of induction and now I've got to continue my connection, because it's the listening and connecting with your staff, wherever they might be, that gives you the energy and the ideas. And it's how can you collaborate and bring people together? Because our job often in this space is to facilitate great ideas, to facilitate that environment where people can flourish. So I'm always saying to colleagues, if they ask, find your little opportunities, find your ways to connect. You will get bogged down sometimes because you just do, but you've got to find those ways to just look up in the organization, but also look out. So that would be my other point. How are you connecting with others in your space? How are you learning from others? I'm a real fan of Steal with Pride. So I'm very open about, I share everything that I've done and what I've learned, because actually, if it can be adapted, why wouldn't I want somebody else to utilize it? And I've been the recipient of that. So, we are a community where we should be sharing and learning from each other. So find your little community of, like-minded colleagues in your profession, but also find like-minded colleagues in your organization. And I think that will give you the energy, and continue to be constantly curious about what's happening with the future of work, what's happening with different generational expectations. Make yourself feel uncomfortable to, find connections with people who are going to challenge you. And I think that point about the jolts of joy, for me, that's how you keep that from getting sucked into this is too hard. It's just every day, just try and find one thing, even if you don't call it a jolt of joy, just a moment where you think, actually, that is what, even if it's a horrible thing that's happened, was there anything in that actually moved us forward? And I just think that will give people some of that resilience and energy, because I know these jobs are tough, really tough at times.
Yeah, and it's an interesting. I don't want to kind of spend too long on the past, because I really want to kind of focus on the future and some of the successes. But if we imagine that grey area in your plan, which represents the past, and you're wanting to move forward, but in that past, people have been tired. You've had the pandemic. We know the challenges that are experienced within the sort of health and care sector, and people can become bogged down, and they can also become very suspicious. Angie, become suspicious of HR. They become suspicious of leaders and managers, and we almost hunker down just to protect ourselves. And how are you Are you coming up? Are you facing that? I suppose the first question in that grey area. Are you finding people are hunkered down, and how are you addressing some of those issues, maybe around suspicion or mistrust, or this is just another initiative? Why should I try something else? How are you dealing with? Well, I suppose, are you experiencing it? I think rather than making an assumption you are, and if you are, how are you dealing with any of those issues if they're coming up?
We're definitely dealing with them, and I should just mention this has been developed against a backdrop of industrial action within WAST.
Well,
So we have had 6-7 months of industrial action, and in effect, part of the creation of this was done on picket lines, because I was talking to colleagues on picket lines alongside my senior colleagues, because we made a commitment again with our chief exec to say, actually, there is an industrial action going on, but it is not our dispute, it's a national dispute. So we do not want to end up in combative relationships with colleagues. But we do also want to make sure we're hearing and listening to some of the other issues that are concerning colleagues that aren't about pay. And in fact, that grey that you see in the corner of my rich picture, I don't even think it's the past. It's now, it was the current. That was the current. And so I really wanted to show that we heard that, and we were recognizing it. We weren't ignoring it, we'd heard it. And I think just by doing that, listening, hearing, and saying that actually we were going to try and do something about it makes the difference. So that would be one thing. I think, again, it's the continual dialogue through as many routes as possible. Yep, obviously had people say, heard it all before, the devil's in the detail, where's the reality? And that's why I said you've got to celebrate every tiny win, every tiny change you make, and bring it right back and make the connections for people. So if they see something happening, whatever it might be, so for example, within WAST at the moment, we've introduced, you may have seen some of it on Twitter, we've introduced shorts for colleagues during the summer months. Lots of engagement on that topic. That was because we listened to colleagues who said that would be really valuable. It's very warm, etc., etc. There's lots of reasons why you couldn't do it, but we are doing it. And that's just one tiny example. But those little examples where people are saying, actually, this matters. And then there's bigger things where they say, actually, we want to get home on time. What are you going to do about that? And I think it's just showing all the time, David, that you haven't forgotten and that you are trying to make progress. So that's my point about the communication, and the continuous engagement is probably at the heart of trying to reduce some of that distrust. But some of it will always exist to some degree, but just trying to mitigate it.
And the organisation, there will always be tension. But let's talk. When you said shorts, I was thinking, what did that mean? Shorts, as in, but you mean physical wearing shorts? And so it's just drawing on that, because it's a really great example of a small thing that can make a massive difference. People are talking about being presumably uncomfortable in the heat, wanting to feel more comfortable, and so many people would have to put that on engagement surveys, or they talk about it and they feel, well, nothing's going to be done. What's the point of talking about this? And it seems like what you've done is you've listened and acted upon that information and that feedback, and that's going to have an impact. What kind of impact did that have when you did that, when you made that response to requests that were coming through from the workforce for more comfortable attire for them to do their work?
Well, if you look at Twitter and you look at hashtag Shortsgate, you can see it. I don't think there's ever been.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to go and have.
I don't think I've ever seen such engagement, because actually it's that point to remember. It's those things that matter.
Yes.
It's basics. Get the basics right. Do I feel comfortable to be able to carry out my role? Do I have the right tools and equipment? We've got way more to do. We've got lots to do around uniform more generally. But it's that actually, rather than a mindset of why we can't do something, trying to come from it from, is this possible? So another area we're looking at the moment is flexible working for our frontline staff who work shifts. What can we do to be more flexible? How can we facilitate flexible working? What might be possible? So that art of the possible, but also managing expectations that there might be some things we really can't do because of the nature of particular jobs. But I think it is that constant openness about, okay, you've told us, we've heard you. Let's think about how we could do this. What could we create? What are your views? What might be possible? We might not be able to give everything on this, but what could happen? And I think we all do this. We know we do it. What I don't think we're as good at is sharing that we're doing it, and that it's sharing sometimes when we can't change something.
Yeah.
We've tried. And that's the bit about the communication and the marketing and the promotion and the just engagement.
But yeah, it is, but it's also this level of honesty and transparency and candor and humility and desire to listen and desire to engage, but also to express when we can't do things. And it sounds like there's a really big ongoing dialogue that exists within the organization between the P&C function, with your leadership, your C-suite, and also with others. And for me, dialogue is a defining feature in our organizations, and dialogue underpins justice and that concept of justice. I want to just talk about that. I was talking at a webinar a couple of days ago about justice and what I call transformative justice, and how HR departments or people teams are moving away from the sort of retributive, very fixed policies and processes to deliver outcomes to something a little bit more person-centered, more restorative. In HR, in health and social care, there's a sort of focus on just culture. I just wonder, Angie, what role that's playing in the way you're developing your people and culture activities, and what relationship you have with justice, and how are you redefining the rules and the policies within WAST to help create the framework to deliver the kind of successes that you're talking about here?
Yeah, and it's a really valid point. So we've been embracing the whole concept of compassionate practices. So again, thinking about that just culture, trying to look at discipline and particularly discipline processes through the lenses of all involved, whether that be victim, whether that be alleged perpetrator, whether that be witnesses, whether that be managers. Because actually, again, thinking about how HR has evolved into this sort of new people and culture profession, that's a shift. Because we didn't do that. Our job was to deal with processes, and we sometimes forgot the people were at the heart of this. We sometimes forgot that this was about so many people impacted by protracted discipline investigations, by respect and resolutions that took for months and months. So we've had a real emphasis on training our managers around compassionate practices and our trade union colleagues, but also this lens of, when I talk about getting the basics right, thinking about our processes, and do they add stress or do they actually remove stress for people? And how sympathetic and supportive are we with that? And how do we get the conversations going, which is not that we will tolerate, gross misconduct, or that there'll still be dismissals in the organization. Of course there will, but we're doing it through the lens of learning, discussing, educating, and then potentially, hopefully, improving. And I think that is a massive shift, David, for organizations, particularly in the public sector, where it has not been like that. It has been very much, there's a process, get through it. It usually takes months, and everybody's impacted by that.
And not impacted in a great. Just going to shout out to Mary Brown, Mary from Tennessee. Fantastic to have you here on today's People and Culture Essentials videocast, and thanks for your really positive feedback there, Mary. It's great to have you and welcome you to the session. I think Mary's really reinforcing the importance of the listening, and sometimes it's going back to some of those basic principles. But something else. I've worked within the health and social care sector for as long as I've been doing this work. And it seems that over the last 20, 30, maybe more years, there's been a real focus on target culture and objectives and outcomes. And, I've often thought about, we hit the target, but kind of missed the point. And it seems to me that you talked about the end point. I think, I can't remember the exact phrase you used, but almost that wasn't as important as the journey. So how is a people and culture professional in an environment which is obsessed with targets and KPIs and metrics and outcomes and measurables, how are you balancing your focus on journey and process as being equally, if not more important than outcome? Because it seems to me there may well be some culture clash going on there. I just wonder, have you experienced that? And if you have, how have you dealt with it?
I'm smiling because you're absolutely right about the whole sort of performance element, which was new to me when I came in to WASP back last year. I thought, wow, there is so much data and so many metrics that our colleagues are held to account for. It's actually been easier than I thought, partly because there are metrics that I've aligned with our people and culture plan. Hard metrics, sick absence, discipline, grievance, turnover, recruitment,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
But then I've also unpicked in terms of pulse surveys about we need to do how is engagement, how are people feeling? Does our if our sick absence goes down, where does it go down? Does mental health go down? Does mental health go up? So I want it to be a much more nuanced discussion. But I also I asked a colleague of mine because my board asked if I could share with them what I thought success would look like. And I talked to a colleague and I said, I really don't want to give them a ton of metrics. I really don't. And she said, leave it with me. And she came back a day later with an amazing video she had created herself, which showed what it will feel like, what people will hear, what people will see at the end of
Wow.
this journey. And I shared it with the non-execs and our main board, and they liked it. And I felt like there was a few light bulb moments where they thought, actually, this is so much more than just hard metrics.
Yeah.
So again, it comes back to that point about we're all different, aren't we? Some colleagues love the data. They want to see all that evidence. And some of this is me also saying, I've done this. I've seen the results that you can get in terms of reputation, in terms of your brand as an organization, in terms of sick absence going down, etc. All of those can be achieved. But at the heart of this, we will have colleagues who genuinely feel safe, psychologically safe in the workplace, love what they do, and feel like they make a difference. That's it. That really is it. And we will know through many, many routes, including our patients and including our commissioners, our stakeholders. People will see it and feel it. And that's quite hard, isn't it? Because some people just don't work like that. So you have to give a bit of both, but you also have to say, trust me, please come on the journey. Come with me.
Yeah, I love that. And I think for anyone who's in HR or people and culture thinking about this, I love the balance that you're describing there. You can have the harder metrics. You can start to look at some of those around absence and, as you said, performance and discipline and grievance numbers. And perhaps there's, you can associate cost and time and all of the stuff that goes with that, and a reduction perhaps in the tribunals or all of those kind of formal mechanisms. But then that's offset with this more human sense of I can feel it, I can see it, I can touch it. It's something that I can see happening around me in the culture, but you can't put it on an Excel spreadsheet. But that's equally as important and a counterweight to those formal measures and the structure. And I think it feels like so many of us struggle with that in terms of measuring the success of these kind of initiatives. That balance, I think, is a real inspiration for anyone who's thinking about this. And that video sounds like what a lovely thing to do,
Yeah.
to go away and produce that as a piece of content, because that shows not just it can be done, but also such an incredible engagement with the whole initiative. I absolutely love that. And I guess just going back to something you said, I kind of didn't come back into it, Angie, but you talked about the industrial relations challenges that the organisation's been experiencing. I think I heard you say that the picket lines, you're out there and you're talking to people. And I think with many in HR, when there's industrial relations strife, it sometimes feels like there's a sort of almost a facing off between HR and management and the unions. And also it can feel quite combative. It can create quite a combative culture or atmosphere in an organization. It feels that, again, I'm just trying to dig into the practical things you're doing. As you were walking the talk, literally, to get out and talk to people at the moment, and you weren't engaging in this polemic or this polarization. It felt like you were leaning. Could you just say a bit more? Because that, to me, felt like a really important message, and I kind of skipped over it, as how you were handling that moment of industrial relations challenge.
Yeah, and because it went on for sort of 6 months, I'll be honest, it was not helpful that we had industrial action, but from a personal point of view, in terms of induction, I had an opportunity to connect and communicate with colleagues I probably wouldn't have been, because they would have been out on their ambulances, they would have been, serving our patients. So it's not the greatest way to have to do it, but it was an opportunity. Yeah, it's an opportunity. And we took that opportunity because we had opportunities to, in a really non-judgmental, non-confrontational way, hear firsthand from colleagues about what was happening for them on a daily basis. And that's quite difficult to do in a national organisation. Remember, we're across Wales, dispersed. Colleagues, come on shift. They do 24-hour shifts. A lot of our colleagues, they're out as soon as they arrive. They're out, serving patients. They're outside hospitals. It is quite challenging to get groups of colleagues together to really engage. So, and I think our strategy of just, this is not about us. We are not going to get into conflict on this. We will try, and our chief exec particularly, we did open sessions and said, we respect people's right to strike. We will try and facilitate allowing that to happen, obviously recognizing we need to have some level of service. And I think that was a real change and a shift change in terms of, we are not going to play the traditional game of fighting, arguing, it's between us. It's not. And even if there was even if there had been a local situation, again, I think we would have tried really hard to say, actually, we have to move beyond this. We have to be listening. We have to be doing things, not just listening, taking action rather than telling. And I think that shift from telling to listening, which telling had been quite key. If you think during a pandemic, there was a lot of sort of, we've just got to get things done. We're now in a world where actually it is much more about listening and learning. And as I said, co-creating.
I was looking at the comments coming through. So we're listening to the People and Culture Essentials videocast from the People and Culture Association. We've got Angie Lewis, the Director of People and Culture from Welsh Ambulance Service Trust, or WAST. And thank you for joining us today. And thanks you for all the questions. And if you're listening to us on demand on record, I hope that you're enjoying today's videocast. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm loving this conversation because it's practical tool after practical tool after advice and guidance. And a couple of the comments, Vanessa, great to have you here today, Vanessa, and welcome back. And Vanessa's saying it's fantastic to hear you talk about psychological safety, Angie, and how these light bulb moments that have happened, which are enabling the wonderful transformations that you're describing, and at the heart of that is enabling people to feel safe. And Gareth is saying everything that you're saying about human beings is back to a human level. So simple. I think we'd all say, it is, it's so simple, so common sense. But as Gareth rightly says, it's so often forgotten. It's also one of the few parts of our function that will be resilient to artificial intelligence. And you can't automate empathy. Well done, Ange. You love that. You can't automate empathy. And I think it's brilliant because it sort of speaks to me a little bit about the potential for people and culture. Because if we focus on the elements of people and culture, which are those human elements, compassion and empathy and dialogue and justice and engagement, we can't automate those. Then I think it really positions the people and culture function as the driver of this sort of human experience in the workplace, and that then sort of leans into the sort of the patient outcome, and it positions people and culture to me in this really exciting and innovative and deeply strategic role in our organisation that perhaps we're struggling to before when it's reliant on transactional, procedural-led HR. I don't know. Angie, do you have any thoughts on any of the comments from Vanessa or Gareth yourself?
Well, I totally agree, and that's why I said, that's why we've got a seat at the table. And I should have said at the beginning, when I joined WAST, of course, my title was Director of Workforce and Organisational Development. And within a couple of weeks, I remember talking to Jason, my chief exec, and saying, "Oh no, I can't be one of those. I just can't. Please, can we reposition and think about people and culture, and it will fit with a new plan, and for my own team as well to feel like." Things have changed and we're repositioning ourselves. And he was like, "Yep, love it." I said, "Oh, but I better check with the rest of my peers just to see if anyone's got any antibodies to it." And I talked to all of my peers who were like, "No, totally agree." So I was like, "See, that's a little win, isn't it?" I was like, I thought I was going to get a little bit of kickback. I didn't get any, which is just lovely to see. And I think that point you've made, we have a pivotal role to play. This is not, yes, we have to get the basics right. We have to do the transactional. Of course, that has to just run. But the bit that is the added value of people who work in this space is doing the challenging, holding the mirror. What type of leaders do we want to be? How do we want people to feel when they come to work for us on a daily basis? How do we feel? on a daily basis. That's our job. That's what we can do best, I think. And that's where I think we've just got to own it and just say, that's what we're bringing to the table. So you either want that or you don't want it. So I think that's a key one for me, David.
I think it's amazing. And I think if you speak to if you went, I do a bit of lecturing on various masters in HRM and you speak to people who are coming into the HR profession, and that's why they come into HR. That's why they're choosing this amazing profession to be a people professional. And it's only when they come into the organization, I think, that it starts to kind of begin to become abundant to them that it's not quite that. It feels like the way you're describing people and culture and the way you're establishing it in WASP is the reason people come into HR. And it feels to me that what you're describing doesn't just deliver benefit within Welsh Ambulance Service Trust and an abundance of benefits within the organisation. It feels to me that it's going to be an opportunity for the profession to attract real talent into the organisation, because there's going to be a connection between what we actually say HR is about and what HR is actually doing. And it feels, again, people might have their own views on this, but it feels to me there's been a bit of a disconnect over some period of time because of the rigidity and formality and the complexity and the focus on workforce issues or these more sort of abstract ideas rather than actually driving effective people and culture. So it just feels very exciting to hear you speak, and I'm sure people who are thinking about joining the people profession would be equally as inspired as much as those who are already within it. You're at Companies House. How long were you at Companies House for?
10 wonderful years.
10 years. Oh, wow, a decade. So you're there, and you were offered the gold standard in the Minds Workplace Wellbeing Index Awards. And I just wonder, kind of, how important do you think mental health and wellbeing are in the realms of people and culture? How much does that feature or should feature in the work that we're talking about when we talk about people and culture? And I suppose that the next natural question for me is any practical steps and advice that you might have for people leaders to create a healthier workplace. So just some reflections on those 10 wonderful years, Angie.
Yeah, and they were 10 wonderful years. And I had an opportunity when I was in Companies House to practice and try so many things again, because I had fantastic chief execs who allowed me to fly, really. So I'll be forever grateful for that, because I've been able to take some of that learning into WASP and show that it does work. But we were particularly passionate about well-being and mental health 6-7 years ago. I had personally experienced some poor mental health a point in my life. I was diagnosed with reactive depression after the sudden loss of family members, and I was very open about that. And I felt that organizations and stigma around mental health were really, really sort of factors that we weren't addressing. We had quite high sick absence at the time around lots of other issues. So we signed up to the Time for Change Wales commitment to reducing stigma. We developed a sort of network of mental health champions, mental health first aiders. As I said, I shared my own experiences. We had blogs from colleagues. My chief exec was an absolute powerful advocate. And just it grew to the point that actually mental health more generally, poor mental health, good mental health, people with complex mental health conditions, it was open, it was very transparent, and it was, again, linked to more general culture change about this is a safe organization. You can be yourself. You can be who you are. We value every person, and we accept you do not turn up on a daily basis and just leave who you are behind. And I think that culmination of obtaining the award, and probably the Investors in People Platinum as well, were the sort of external validation of all the work we had done collectively to create that magical, and it truly was magical, safe space. And so that's my aspiration for my new organization.
Amazing. I mean, I know a little bit about IIP. IIP Platinum is that's an incredible standard, an incredible achievement as well as the award. I think placing that focus on mental health and just that authenticity and that openness and that transparency and just creating the space to talk about those issues, I can see why that would be such an important feature of achieving that. So, Angie, thank you so much. Angie, one of the things we're undertaken at the People and Culture Association is more research into the shift from sort of classic HR into people and culture. And we've got about 200 respondents to a survey that we ran, and Jonathan, our People and Culture Association coordinator, who introduced us today, is busily writing up the report. So we're seeing, I think, nearly 50% of organisations that we've been speaking to have begun to make the shift. But I just curious, and we had some work with some Bayes students join us, and there was a little bit of conversation around brand washing. Is this just taking the HR function, rebranding it as a people and culture function, but just retaining the status quo? And I think there may be a bit of that happening. And one of the issues, I think, is there's a fear of giving up the structures and the policies and the processes, and maybe embracing this freer flowing, more open and aspirational approach to HR. I don't think it's a deliberate thing. I think it's just maybe a bit of a fear or uncertainty. And what would you say to an HR director, chief HR officer, who's considering making the shift to P&C, or has maybe already done it, but is worried about giving up those processes and the systems and the case management and the stuff which I think is a drag anchor on HR? What would you say to them, Angie, to reassure them that it's okay?
Well, remember, I work in the public sector, okay? Have all my life. There are certain processes we've just got to do. We have,
Yeah.
but you can push the boundaries, okay? So in Companies House, we removed our sort of performance management process, got rid of it,
Wow.
and we introduced a culture of conversations,
Love it.
check-ins with a focus on well-being, goals, and development.
Love
okay,
it.
you can do it. You can try things. They may not work. If they don't work, then fine. But it's just trying little things. But recognizing there are certain statutory, I get it. I work, I know you can't do everything, but it's just baby steps. I know we're not Netflix. I know that. But that doesn't mean some of the techniques used by certain organizations can't be adapted or utilized. And I just think you have to be brave sometimes to just try, even if it's in a small part of the business.
Yeah.
If you want to pilot, if you want to just try something, but don't be held back by, well, we've got so many we've got too much statutory requirements, we can't do this, because actually you can, and you should. Again, it's the mindset. Keep thinking about what you can. And also, let's remember, the days of thinking we have to write policies because everybody wants to abuse every thing that happens to them have gone. The majority of people are decent. They want to do a brilliant job and they want to feel valued. Let's reweight. If you just change that mindset, it just changes the whole way in which we deliver our services.
Absolutely. And I sometimes feel that people have got a perception of the gods of compliance throwing lightning bolts down if you deviate from something. And I think, and there's a real fear and apprehension, I think, that we're going to be hit with some kind of a lightning bolt. But it feels to me that not only have you demonstrated that's not the case, but actually by building this strong allyship and this, the whole relationship and collaboration with leaders and unions and employees and everyone, actually also protecting the organization, because you're all on the journey together. This isn't being done to, it's being done with. And that's such a powerful and important message, I think, Angie, as well. It allows a little bit more risk taking and a bit more agility, because you've got people with you. Common purpose, I think, will probably be the term that comes to mind for me. Thank you. So we're coming to the end of today's People and Culture. I've loved this, Angie. I could just talk all afternoon, quite frankly. I think it's amazing. I think you've shared so much wisdom and experience and so many practical tips and guidance. And I hope people have enjoyed listening to this today. And I just wonder, Angie, kind of where next? What are you working on at the moment? Have you got any exciting things happening in WAS that you'd like to share with people today?
Every day's exciting, I have to tell you that. But at the moment, it's about building those networks. We've got some thriving networks, but how do we really get those connections, that sense of purpose, but also that they are my early adopters of the culture change? And then I've got a big section. I've got volunteers. Obviously, I've got, nearly, I think it's just over 1,000 colleagues who volunteer with us, who are not part of the workforce in that sense. They have other jobs, they have other lives, but they're such an amazing talent pool. And I'm just really excited to think about how I build that energy and excitement and connection with that group of people as well, because that isn't a space I've ever gone into. So it's, again, new and exciting. And again, could have 1,000 more advocates for a different way of, showing up every day for work. And if it helps them in
Yeah.
their other jobs, for example, just think how amazing that could be as well.
Wow. So this is P&C by stealth,
Oh, yeah.
getting it out there. So what kind of roles are they? First responders? Is that the
Yeah,
kind of
first responders, they could be volunteer
shout out.
drivers. Yep.
Yeah.
And this is, our job is to spread this, because
Yeah.
every person deserves to work in an organization where they feel valued and can do their best work. That's our job. It's not just in our own organizations, it's in every organization. So every connection we make potentially spreads it. I used to talk about it infecting others, but I stopped that because of COVID. But there is an element of that is our job. It is.
Well, viral marketing, I mean, back to your conversation that we were having earlier about marketing, PR, comms, viral marketing is, that's hence social media. Social media has risen through the development of viral marketing. So, taking those principles and those disciplines out and sharing that information out. And I love the work you're doing there and sharing that and actually then helping those to then blossom hopefully into other areas of activity in other organizations. An incredible aspiration. So the best of luck to, and a big shout out to all of those first responders and drivers and other volunteers who are supporting the organization as well. They're no longer the unsung heroes, because you're singing in praise for them here today, Angie. And another question that I like to ask is there any one or thing or person along the way, or could be multiple things or people or persons, I guess, who've inspired you on your journey, Angie?
Oh, do you know what? I get inspired nearly every day, particularly in this organisation by the colleagues that I'm working with. But particularly, I'd say, I come back to my networks that I've worked with over the years. Those colleagues who come forward, who have a passion for a protected characteristic, for underrepresented groups, who have put themselves forward on top of their day jobs and bring together communities of like-minded people, they inspire me, because actually it's a tough gig. They're doing their jobs. It's not about power or influence. They could be at different parts of the organization, but they step forward. And I have been overwhelmed, particularly I would say in the last 7 or 8 years, to see colleagues who genuinely want to make a difference to an organization. There is nothing in it for them really, and they are stepping forward. So I salute them, and they are the people that inspire me every day.
That's amazing. Angie, thank you so much. So I think just in summary, I mean, this has been an incredible exploration of the practical applications of people and culture within an organization. I think sometimes people look at this topic and feel it's aspirational, it's out of reach, it won't fit in the tough realities of the organizations that they're working in. And you've broken through all of that today, Angie. You've demonstrated this is not just aspirational, it's possible. And you're making those possibilities happen. And it's real, they're real jolts of excitement and joy to listen to those, and you're creating those moments within the organization. I think anyone who's out there who aspires to drive a big shift in the culture, to be more person-centric and less reliant on those rigid processes, but more open to hearing and listening and engaging with their people and developing those partnerships and coalitions with their board and senior leaders. I hope they've taken a lot from today. I know they would have done. I have. I've absolutely loved listening to this, and I think you've set the bar really high and provided I think the term a North Star for us all to probably point towards at Welsh Ambulance Service Trust. So I wish you all. I think we're about to be hit by some tough weather, given that it's the beginning of July. And I think you might be getting it in particular over in Wales as well.
For
July.
That's just life, isn't it?
I know, exactly. Well, whatever the weather's doing, wherever you are, because here in the UK, we're getting storms and terrible weather. I know elsewhere it's baking in 40 degree plus heat. So wherever you are in the world, I hope that you have a fantastic weekend. And Angie, thanks for joining us. By way of a little thank you, we have an initiative at TCM. Obviously, the PCA is part of TCM, called TCM. And TCM is our social value initiative, and we'd love to donate £100 to a charity of your choice for being part of today's conversation. So Jonathan will be in touch with you after the session just to find out who you'd like to donate that money to, and we'll set that up for you early next week. Although saying that, it's our summer picnic on Monday, Angie. So hopefully, hopefully, so it'll be Tuesday, hopefully in Hyde Park, where we'll be playing rounders and having various picnic sausage rolls and such like. We'll be enjoying ourselves So that'll be on Tuesday, but I digress. Angie, thank you so much.
That's all
It's
right.
been an absolute honour and a privilege. I've enjoyed the conversation so much. And to everyone who's joined us live, and also those of you who are watching this on record, thank you for joining us. Please do join the PCA. I know Jonathan will put some links up on the chat. Please do join the People and Culture Association. It's all about trying to have these conversations and just explore this amazing new area of people and culture. But for now, Angie and everyone, thank you so much for being part of today's conversation, and look forward to speaking again soon.
Yeah, lovely to see you all. And again, if anyone needs any support, motivation, a bit of a jolt of joy, you know where I am on LinkedIn. Lovely to connect if that's possible.
Amazing. Angie, thank you. You're getting some lovely feedback there as well. So Angie, thank you so much, and thanks everybody for your feedback and contribution during the session. Thank you. And well, Jonathan, well done you as well. As always, you've organised a cracker. Well done, Jonathan.
Yeah, well done.
Thank
See ya.
you. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Angie.